struggles. They went through the same hardships. They understand what it's like to take board licensing exams. They understand what it's like to stay in the library for 15 hours. And having that community where you can just link up with someone, not know where they go to school, not know where they did residency, but just immediately connect on that level of we've both been through one of the hardest career paths is just something that you can't find in a lot of other careers.
And you're probably telling all these stories under your podcast, Surviving Medicine. So when did you decide to start the podcast, and what topics do you cover in the podcast?
Yeah, so we had started first an admissions company that helped students, pre-meds, get into medical school. We realized there was a need for it. We realized that a lot of the pre-med advisors or a lot of the pre-med advising out there wasn't up to the level that we felt it could have been at. So we started helping students get into medical school, but then we soon realized that there was a disconnect, and the struggles that pre-med students were going through was the same struggles that medical students were going through. They were burnt out, they were tired, they were anxious, they were really nervous about everything that they had to go through and the track that they were on. And so we realized that our job was to help people, and our job was to bring stories, bring humanity back into medicine, and teach people how to learn exactly what it takes to get through that path, but that they're not alone. And so many times healthcare providers are stuck in their own world, and they feel that they're alone in their suffering, and everyone is a type A student and doing amazing, and they're the one that's suffering, when in reality a lot of us are. So we started the podcast funded by our admissions company, and the podcast is centered on how can we bring these stories back out to the public, to med students, to pre-meds, to residents, and show them that they're not alone. And here's some tips, tools from real healthcare providers who have already gone down that track. Here are tips and tools from them that they can then take back in their life and use to help them get through whatever hardships they're going. I think it's going to be a great outlet for students to use, especially in residency and early age physicians, to prevent burnout and find ways that other physicians are dealing with the struggles that all of us deal with as healthcare providers.
Type A, it's probably very difficult for type A personalities to actually ask for help when they need help.
Correct. So I think so many people in the healthcare field are used to being one of the smartest or at the top of their game. In college and high school, they were always someone who was ahead of the curve. They were always smart and ambitious. But when you start medical school, you are with everyone that is identical to you. And so not everyone could be in the top 10%. Not everyone can be the valedictorian or the salutatorian that maybe they were in their high school or in their undergrad university. So we realized that students, type A students that were used to being ahead of the curve, now could be at the bottom of their medical class. And that is something that so many of them struggle with because they've never had to ask for help. And we wanted to give them a resource where there's no strings attached. Their school isn't going to know if they use our resources or if they're listening to our podcast. Their school isn't going to know if they're struggling with anxiety or depression, but they now have a resource that they can use to try to overcome some of their struggles without having to feel like it's going to come back and bite them in any way, or there's going to be repercussions for them struggling.
What's your tagline? I saw this sentence on your Instagram. A science nerd turned into or from. I'm trying to think of the exact sentence. I had it here, but long story short, you call yourself a science nerd and also an immortal heart or something like that. There was
interesting. I don't even know which one this is.
You shared it, and I just wanted to ask you your tagline. If that's something, let me look it up again.
Yeah, I don't even remember it being my that's.
Yeah, well, it's
I write a lot of stuff.
Tagline, but usually when you ask people, so science kid and immortal kid at heart, there was something like that.
Yeah. So I would say I'm kind of the eternal child, but I'm a science nerd. And to be a scientist, you have to think like a kid. You have to know that there's so much creativity. There's so much things we don't know. When you give a kid a project, let's start from the very young. When you tell a kid, okay, we want to teach you how to walk, and you're trying to get them to walk, they may fail 50 times, but they never give up. It's not in their head that this isn't for me, maybe I'm going to fail. And science is that way, and medicine is that way. You can have to try 50 times an experiment or test something or a project or working with patients. But I call myself kind of the immortal child because I think science is so much more creative and so much more playful than what we make it out to be. We think it's very rigorous and it's very structured, when in reality, the breakthroughs in medicine, the breakthroughs in science come from people that look at things differently. And children are the one, that's the one time in our life when we are a kid that we see the world how we want to see it, with no preconceived ideas of what it should be.
And we're always curious, too, to learn, to explore. So that's also a great quality that children have, and then we lose it later on in life. So I have some questions up here, but I want you to scroll down.
Yeah.
On social media, we asked our followers what questions they would like to ask our guest today. So scroll down to the questions. If there's any that you would like to answer, I'll start with the Instagram handle and then read the question for us, please.
Should I say the Instagram handle?
Yes, please.
Okay.
We're going to start this new add-on to our interview series, and we want to add the question right next to what you are reading. It's more interactive and a social piece that we want to integrate. How long have we been planning for?
We are at 15 minutes.
And what time is it?
1:36.
Thank you.
Okay, so one of your followers asked, it's Nats_cat, and he asked, what is your favorite care routine? What is your favorite care routine, and how do you de-stress after a challenging week? So one of the things that I think is really important is that we don't wait for the stress to build up. So many times we prevent taking care of ourselves, or we put self-care on the back burner with the assumption that, after I get through this test or after I get through this, I'll be able to take care of myself, or I'm going to be able to take a day off. But then something is always there on the back of our mind, or we have to do something. So I value the ability to take time to center myself, to provide self-care on a daily basis. And I think that that's something that not enough of us build into our daily schedule. I make sure I work every morning. I typically work out, and whether it's going from a run, whether it's doing push-ups and sit-ups, whether it's any little thing, I always wake up and I work out first. I typically meditate for about 15 minutes, center my mind, work out, make sure I have, a good breakfast, and then I'm ready to start the day. But then even at night, I do the same thing. When I get home, when I finish all of my work, sometimes I'm working till 12 or 1 a.m. On those long days, I still get home, I put away my computer, I put away my phone, I hang out with my wife for a few hours. I don't touch social media. I don't touch anything. And I just have that time that I can rebalance, talk with someone that isn't in healthcare, get to hear their perspective about their day, and take the attention off of what's in my head, because I think that's the best way to provide yourself a well-rounded opinion of where you're at and where you're going to take your next steps.
Great. Is your wife also a part of medicine?
No, she's like
Different career?
exact opposite.
Okay.
She's a custom menswear stylist.
Okay. So how is it, I'll take that back
sorry.
really quickly, no worries. So being married, and you're going to med school, how do you balance your personal life and the load of med school? Especially married to someone that is not from medicine.
Yeah.
So can you give us a couple of tips for people that are interested in, sometimes we think that we can only pursue careers or we can only have a family. Sometimes you can do all, if you actually balance things right. So
I think there's a common misconception in medicine that you can't have a family until you're done with residency, or you can't have kids, or you can't get married until after residency. And I would say that that's the exact opposite. To take time to meet other people, to talk to people outside your field or not, or deal with relationships on a day-to-day basis is the thing that makes you a much better healthcare provider. And I say that because you have an outside perspective. Even if they are in medicine, you have another perspective of what someone else is going through, and you're having to deal with on a day-to-day basis how to overcome their issues that they're coming from. You're learning how to work in a very tight, committed team. You're learning how to balance life. You're learning how to talk to them about your day and their day, overcoming struggles in their life, in your life. You have a permanent teammate, a permanent team player. But it really, although it can be time consuming because you take date night this night, or in the morning you're taking care of them, or you're making them breakfast, or you're making them food, that is some of the most rewarding time that I think translates to patient care. Something that translates to patient care more than you would think, because bedside manner really should be like you're working with your family, and you're dealing with your patients. That should be your family and a spouse, a loved one, a partner. Those are the best people that you can learn how to treat someone on a one-on-one interaction, and you should treat your patients the exact same way.
Do you have any memory